All right, we are recording.
All right.
Woo! And we are launched, by the way. So this is episode 6, but episode 1 has officially launched as of 6 minutes ago. So this thing's
Wow.
real. This thing's real.
That's exciting.
Exactly.
Things are happening.
Yeah, heck yeah, man. Slowly but surely. That's going to be our slogan. Slowly but surely, they got it done.
Right. Well, the weeks are flying by.
Heck yeah.
So how was your last week?
It was good. It was good. I did a little research. There were no comic book artists dying last week, so we could skip that as an agenda item.
Actually,
you did? Oh, okay. Who?
yeah, no, I just realized, like, I wonder if we missed any big ones right before we started this series, because if we if we have this as a segment, we don't want to like miss anybody, that just passed away right before we started out here.
Yeah.
So I Googled, comic book artists who died in 2021.
Yeah.
And yeah, not too many in 2021, but in 2020 there was a couple of big ones. So Richard Corbin passed away.
Ugh.
And I know he was definitely a favorite of mine.
Oh yeah.
He was in Heavy Metal magazine and Epic magazine, and what was that? Rip Off Press used to have Den, right? And what am I thinking of? Fangoria? Was that something?
No, just Fangor.
Fangor, right?
Yeah, Fangor, and there was another one he did too, and that was all his. That was all his publishing company.
Yeah, and like the thing, I don't know too much about Richard Corbin, but I'll tell you what, when I saw his artwork, I didn't understand how he did it. And I still to this day don't understand his workflow.
Yeah.
And I do think that airbrush was involved, but I cannot imagine how you could do sequential art on paper with airbrush. Doesn't that make the paper wrinkly? And
I think he did it. I think he did it on the film, the actual printer plates. I think the biggest secret, and I don't have any insider information, but I have the sneaky suspicion that he probably had a really excellent relationship with a local printer or a printer that he was getting his stuff done, and he was going out and he was basically there when that print run was going, and even doing pre-production. I mean, you remember how much was entailed in printing, right?
Oh yeah, I worked electronic prepress for years, and I have a degree in graphics, which was like outdated by the time I got my diploma.
Right.
But a lot of old-fashioned stuff, and yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it's all different now. It's all digital now.
Yeah.
But the processes were amazing, and the creativity that came out of it, because how you had to work things around. Like, if people knew how you had to cut film 4 times just to get one, you like, people don't realize, but the coloring process in comics was extremely labor intensive. You had yellow, cyan, magenta, and black, and every layer had to have a person sitting there cutting out all the shapes of Captain America or Hulk or whatever every single time, and then applying a tint of, like, let's say, 20% cyan and 20% and, like, 80% yellow, and they had to sit there with these, like, tints. And when people see those little dots, right, those what are they called, Benday dots, right?
Yeah.
They are they're little, like, screened sticker film that people had to apply on top, right on top of each other in perfect registration, and then that would make a color on a page. So if you had green on a page, the person would be like, "Oh, geez, I got to cut out two sheets and overlay them perfectly on top," and then they had to make a printing plate out of that, and then the printing plate had to register perfectly on the printing press, otherwise it was out of registration. And nowadays, that's actually a kind of like a hip look to purposely do that,
Yep,
right?
yep,
Like the
yep,
TikTok video is an example, like,
yep,
to purposely put the registration plate out
yep,
of sync to
yep.
get that vintage look. But yeah, but so we're in a whole different place now. But yeah, no, Corbin was one that really made me scratch my head to this day, and
A lot of
just
people, a lot of
ca-
people.
captivating, visuals. Some stories, I don't know where they were really going, but just looking at his bodies and his action sequences. Sometimes these covers, like people like rearing back and throwing a punch at a monster or a werewolf or something, unbelievable. And so yeah, so he passed away, and I think I read somewhere real quickly at the time that his daughter inherited everything and that she might
Yeah.
be working on his legacy, keeping it going. And I just cringe to think that my daughter's one day will just have to pick up the mantle here. Um, I don't think it's gonna happen, but I don't might. I
Well, you
wonder if it.
don't know. You don't know. I mean, I think one of the, like the Frazetta girls, I don't know if you're familiar with them. There's two daughters, and I believe Holly's the one that heads up Frazetta girls with her daughter, and they do all the cons, and and they're totally passionate about Frazetta, their father,
No,
grandfather, and stuff,
yeah,
and
but
they
are they
have their.
artists themselves?
No, I think the last interview I saw with oh man, I can't remember the daughter's name. Um, she does draw. I mean, and
Okay.
there's a grandfathering element to it. But just like having somebody like Frazetta as a family member, and you trying to go out there and make
Oh
good on
boy.
yourself as an artist,
Well,
the
we
comparison
know
is
that
just got to be
we know Vaughn
deadly.
Bourdais' son
Oh yeah, man.
tried
Yeah, Mark
his
Baudet.
level, but yeah, he tried his level best to keep things going.
Yeah, no,
And
he did great. I worked with him a little bit. I did a Cobalt 60 flash animation for him,
huh?
and it got back to him like right quick, and he tracked me down, and we were actually I was scheduled because I was hanging out up where he was at the time in Northampton, Massachusetts,
Hmm.
where the turtles are, the Laird and Eastman were, and it was just a
Yeah.
big comic book town. Um, and Yeah, I totally wanted to bring back Cobalt 60, and but things just didn't work out that way, scheduling and stuff. But I
S-
Von Baudet, I mean, whew,
Yeah, that would be great for flash animation because the
oh, it
lines are
was
so
easy.
thick, and it's
Yep.
like and the style of the vectors,
Yep.
just
Oh,
having
it was
those
easy. it was
would
it
have been
was
great.
easy for me to ape it, and obviously it had a pretty.
Yeah, we're gonna have to see. Like we spoke about this a little bit. What's gonna happen in the future with all these, like storied franchises and characters and these legacies. I know Sophie Crumb is pretty talented. I don't know if she's got the business acumen. Probably the Crumb family has like some agents and everything that are just gonna keep making money forever off the Robert Crumb stuff. But
Yeah.
I used to love Sophie Crumb's comics. She wasn't very prolific, but what she made, I guess she had an initial burst, and she made some really good stuff. Uh,
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if she kept with it like her old man, but you know, this is gonna happen
Or her
with every
mother. Our Aileen did
right.
comics too, so she's like one of the few
Yeah, she was in her
female
own right.
female. Yep, 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 yep.
Right, but I mean, that's just, you know, the generation that's older. So, you know, we're
Hmm.
talking about like the next 20, 30, 40 years, you know, what's going to happen. We'll have to see. Um, so yeah, so Richard Corbin just wanted to pay homage. You know, he was, you know, transcending comics, you know, the two-dimensional comics. He really brought in something three-dimensional, um, you know, to the aesthetic of his work. And you know, it's funny. You know, you would think there would be some copycats, but nobody ever did what he did that I saw. Oh, maybe like Ranks or Rocks, right?
Yeah, that
Maybe one guy, maybe one.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, he had a super huge European following.
I
So
imagine.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's a couple of people out there that are, still trying. There's, there's something when you first look at his work, there's something ultra basic about it that you sort of just, when you're a young collector, you just literally flip by it. But when you revisit, especially old heavy metal magazines, and you're going back to those favorite stories, and then you get to his work, you go on a second look over, you're like, whoa, wait a second, this is sort of clever. And then, and you just get really sucked into his personality in storytelling. And he's just one of those few people that brought that to comics.
Yeah, I mean, it was just he was just amazing. He was just amazing. And then to think like, you know, when you would see these covers, to think that he would do interiors, you know, that were, you know, almost as good. They were just like, you know, slightly quicker style, but yeah, he was definitely one worth mentioning. So, you know, a toast to Richard Corbin.
Here, here.
Um, Another person that died before we started our series, um, was Joe Sinnott.
Yeah,
Yeah, and yeah, so he was born in the 20s, so I guess he was an old guy. But
he made it
um,
through. Yeah.
yeah, we were just talking last week about like Jack Kirby's like greatest era, in my view, was you know, the late 60s Fantastic Four. And guess who his inker was in those days? You know,
Joe Sinnott.
that's right. I don't and I honestly I don't know if it's pronounced Sinnot or Sinnot. I just, you know, I'm just guessing, I think. But you know, he was crisp, and you know, it wasn't scratchy lines, and he really took Kirby's work in those days and he made the most out of it. You know, you're talking about first appearance of the Black Panther in those times. You're talking about all the Inhumans and the Medusa line, and you know, then just really getting these like fantastical, you know, lands and these you know, and mechanical, you know, drawings. Like everything was like a background of like machinery, you know, very futuristic stuff. And I think they were, you know, probably one of the best matches ever was Kirby and Sinnot. They had long runs, and so he also passed in the last year or two. I think he was definitely worth mentioning, although I couldn't tell you too much about him past, you know, those golden eras. That's all I kind of had in mind, top of
Right.
mind, for him. But he was definitely a classic, you know. And yeah, and he was only an inker, right? I don't think he ever penciled that I saw.
It's a good question. Don't know.
Also in 2020, we lost um, Denny O'Neil.
You didn't you take a writing class with him?
Yes, and it's a, yeah, you remember, and it
Yeah.
changed my life. Um, I
Yep.
uh, I I signed up for a continuing education course for writing for comics or something. Title was something like that.
When
With
was that, Jake? I'm sorry.
Probably well, yeah, right before I started publishing, so it had to be the early 90s.
I mean, literally
And
it would have to have been like 92 or 90. No, like 93, 94, because I think we get together in 94.
right,
Um,
and I had
not
you know,
93.
and I was trying to make my way as a comic book artist, but when I took this course, um, I realized, wow, I could write, and I ended up selling scripts before I got my first artist gig, with the independent comic companies, and that's when I started working for Brainstorm and Kirk Window. But
Yeah.
I just realized there is a formula, and Denny O'Neill's class was great. First of all, it was packed, and everybody was at the edge of their seats. Sitting there in the audience was Dave Cockrum's son, and he was
Wow.
I think he was at SVA at the time, studying. And so yeah, and so every kind of class was just like him expounding on what he thought was great, what he thought was shit, and then the formula of making a professional, comic book story. He said, you really want to grab everybody's attention with a hook on the first page, and like some mystery or something that really just poses a question, or just grabs people, and then you follow it up, and he had all this really funny commentary about the way things were going, and how TV and the movies were really shaping up, to kind of like take these characters off the page. And as we know later on, he became the major script consultant for the Batman movies, right?
Yeah.
He has credits on all of these big Hollywood productions. It probably made more money in one film than he made in his entire career before that.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's
it was
that's like Roy Thomas writing Conan the Destroyer.
yeah, right. I mean, I mean, all of these things, like the Avengers movie, the first movie made uh hundreds of millions of dollars. I think, billions worldwide. The Avengers comics never made that much money. You could take Avengers 1 to Avengers, 300, whatever they're up to now, and it will not have made, you know, that much money, and one movie, boom, the whole thing. So, at the time, he spoke about the differences between writing for the comics and writing for Hollywood. He had written for Hollywood. He had some very funny stories about writing for, these like cheesy TV series that were like spun off of movies, like Logan's Run TV series and Planet of the Apes TV series. And he said like the realities of what you write, and then going through the budget process was like, okay, a horde of warriors come running over the hill, and they were like, no, we're not going to be able to afford that. It's like,
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
a mob of warriors would come over the hill, and they're no, scratch that. And it's like, okay, a minion of a warrior, no, scratch. So it's like, okay, two warriors come running over the hill. They go, okay, now we can film that.
Right, right.
So there was always those compromises, and he would say that if you're working on a Hollywood script and 10% of your ideas end up on the screen, that's saying a lot. He says,
You're a
everything,
genius.
yeah. He says everything is a compromise, and there was even a funny commercial about that. It's like here's a script that it's about about a teenager, that goes to the, how about we make it a dog, you know, and that's basically how it went. So he was great, and he inspired me to write, to be a writer. I thought like, okay, you get a script and you draw it, you interpret it, but no, you could also write. There's no reason why an artist can't be a writer. And so I started writing, and then I eventually got my art assignments. But I've still been writing, and I write to this day, and I try to keep alive Denny O'Neill's ideas about about imbuing quality, and you know he would say, like, he was asked, what's your favorite um s- you know writing for the comics, and so he brought in as a guest speaker Doug Mensch,
Wow.
who was the writer of lots of different titles, like The Defenders. What else did he write? He wrote Master of Kung Fu.
Yeah.
He had a lot of assignments, and so Doug Mensch, told his story the day he came in. That was great. And yeah, when they asked Denny what was his favorite comics to read, he was saying things like V for Vendetta, um, Aztec Ace, which I never even read. I couldn't even tell you, but it might not be the titles that people might think, you know, and so that it was a very interesting course. But yeah, he passed. He was old then, so I'm sure by the time he passed, he was probably in his 80s at least. And he left behind quite a legacy of he was the steward of the Batman franchise for DC Comics. He was the editor in chief of DC Comics, and he had written Batman stories for decades, and then he was a script consultant on the movies and all that stuff. So um you know just another great career. Although he never drew, he was at the top of the food chain as far as writing and editing.
They said he was one of the nicest people in comics. I think that's when he's brought up in interviews or anything I've seen, people just they he was just the nicest person. And then though to get him upset was a pretty
Hmm.
profound thing.
Right,
So
and I think wasn't he the writer of those award-winning Green Arrow, Green Lantern
I
comics,
think so. Yeah, the
where
ones.
Neil Adams drew?
Yep.
I
Yep.
I think that was O'Neill and Adams, yeah. And
Yeah.
they won all these awards, and it was like groundbreaking. They had to remove the Comics Code approval stamp because,
Yeah.
like, what was the young sidekick got addicted to heroin in
Yeah.
those
No, I can't remember. I was going to say
yeah.
Bucky, but that's yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever his name was, the
Yeah.
young the young guy, Corky, whatever. But but yeah, so he had a storied career, and he never worked for Marvel. Is that a fair statement?
couldn't tell you.
He was a DC guy. He was a DC guy. So, got to give credit to the opposition. Who else is on the list? Let me see, one or two more here. We have so yeah, the same year, Albert Uderzo died. And if you don't know that name, you're not alone. But I'm sure you know the name Asterix.
Oh
He
yes,
was
yes.
he was a very recognizable artist for the Asterix comics, where there's the two little Viking guys, right?
Yep.
That that go through all kinds of adventures. And so that was his title, and so he died. I didn't read I only like thumbed through Asterix when I was a kid. It was a European thing. I don't even know if I had translated copies. I might have had like non-translated copies, so I couldn't even read the words if I had wanted to. But I know it was popular, and it's probably still around to this day. I don't know if they ever made the jump to cartoons or anything, but he passed. And the last one on the list, where we have to go back to 2019, was Steve Ditko.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Steve Ditko, in all of the histories I read about Marvel Comics, Steve Ditko is just this nebulous figure, enigmatic figure, angry man. Um,
Well,
you
I
know,
don't know if he's. I mean, the some of the stuff I've seen is that they're trying to correct the angry part. He when I think when the comic book convention thing started, and then the kind of fanboy fanzine stuff, which would have been like the break into the Bronze Age, he just
mhm.
didn't. He had no interest. He just wanted to work. He
Right.
had his
He
studio. He had
he
a
didn't want to
studio.
come in to the offices. He wanted to work from home.
Yeah, no,
And
he had an office. He had an office. I mean,
yeah, he
at one point, because he shared it with another illustrator named Eric Stanton, who did a lot of like vintage sleaze stuff. And there's a lot
right.
of you know.
Yeah, but in terms of like in the classic Marvel days, they had people working on site, and
Oh
Ditko,
yes, yeah. Sorry. Yeah,
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 and so they called it the bullpen, and
yeah, 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 yeah.
Marvel, and yeah,
Take your
so
pages down the hall, and I'll check
right,
on you in a minute.
right, and yeah, and Ditko very famously, just wanted to mail his stuff in, and not, not have any contact. I mean, that's at least how they're describing it. Again, I recommend the book by Sean Howe, Marvel Comics.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I haven't finished it yet because I'm savoring it. I've long past the part, the '60s where Steve Ditko left Spider-Man at the height of its at its height of its early popularity. It only got bigger, but um, he had definite falling outs of with Stan and with the Marvel brass over the direction, and um, he ended up writing everything. They say that by the end, he was barely taking Stan Lee's synopsis blurbs. He was just doing everything, and he was turning in good stuff, and they were publishing it. But he was a loner, and they say he had very like I guess very divergent political views.
Yeah,
Um,
he was an Ayn Rand follower for objectivism.
right, and so that and his comics ended up getting very weird after that because he did stay in the biz, but I know he worked on Shade the Changing Man, which was
Yeah.
very like kind of bizarre, like hard to follow. And I don't remember what other titles he worked on, but he definitely had steady work, and he was just like one of the most famous names in comics by that point.
He was dominating the Charlton work. I think he was doing a ton of stuff. I mean, to the point where I've come across Charlton issues where he's done everything, cover and every page inside story. So,
Yeah,
and they do look and feel rushed, but um,
yeah. I
still
mean, we
still
yeah
Ditko.
yeah he got his abbreviated style because again these guys realized that they were doing work for hire,
Yes.
and they were the quicker you were, the more money you make, the more
Right.
money you make quickly, and there that you get the same amount of money whether you pour your heart out on a page or whether you just crank it out and just do the minimum.
Yeah.
And so they had this kind of like compromise where it was enough, something that they're proud to put their name on, but it definitely wasn't their
Well,
best
back in
work.
the day, it was really all about hitting those deadlines. I mean, those
Right.
printers were going to go off, whether that story was 100% penciled and inked, to standard, whatever that standard was being touted.
Hmm.
Those
Right.
printers had to run, and if you couldn't get your shit in, that was the number one reason you were not going to get any more work. And I think the bigger part of it is exactly backing what you're saying is that well, why should I put 1000% in it? Let me come up with something that gives that feeling of 100%.
Yeah, I mean the really good established guys knew that, deadlines, they'd been through the ringer with deadlines.
Yeah.
And they wanted to get themselves professionally to a place where they could work at their leisure. And so, they would make deals, for titles that they could take the time and deliver whenever,
Yeah.
you know, and that this also gave rise, after a while to the fill-in artist, right? When Sal Buscema, when you buy the Spider-Man, you say, hey, wait a minute, why is it Sal Buscema inside and not
They
Ross Andrew?
mispronounced. Yeah.
Sal Buscema, right? I know, I famously mispronounced it my whole life. Um, but what happened to Andrew and Esposito? So they missed their deadline, and they had this this extra one shot issue just waiting in the
Mhm.
wings for that. And you see that a lot, in the I think when you got to the 70s, and a lot of these artists were burning out, and it does take a lot out of you to work at this breakneck pace and also have the quality be halfway decent, so
Yeah,
I
well, you
think.
want to talk about somebody who was really bitter. It was sad to find out that John Buscema, um,
Oh yeah,
he
John
was
Bush.
he was disgruntled.
Yeah, now
He,
he
he
was
was,
the more talented of the two brothers, in my opinion.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but yeah, and his work was in high demand. I think he did Avengers,
yeah.
right at the during like real critical times, like after Kirby. I think he stepped in. You know, this was like the
Thor.
second wave. Oh, he did Thor, right? Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
that's true. Yeah, so Marvel's top titles, and real great art, real great style, and a very very copied style, you know um very very studied style, right? He was
Well, you
also
had to
the.
do it. You had to do the Jack Kirby thing. That was what everybody at that point of time when you were getting in, you had to look like Jack because that's what sold comics. That's what the appearance of a comic was.
Yeah, but John Buscema was the guy that I believe they used him in the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way book.
Yeah,
I
that was
think they
down the
used
road.
Buscema, yeah, for that.
Yeah,
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 all of his
yeah,
figures, and here's how to draw a
yeah.
guy, here's how to draw a
He
lady.
came to his own. I mean, it's that same thing you were just saying. With the whole like, don't give them your all style. Which was just more or less, let me give them what they need. To fulfill this. This uh, cheap
This
throwaway product.
right, this and yeah,
and
which
and
is on a
he finally
deadline.
came into it. Yeah, he came into his own in the way of the process. There's a Thor issue. I always forget the number. Um, is it Thor or Silver Surfer? Maybe both of them
Oh,
are in
right, he
that.
was also a Silver Surfer, yeah.
Yeah, and he really people that issue he really broke the confines of feeling more like um, um, Jack Kirby than obviously him coming into his own and stuff, and it being accepted. I think was the thing, because that's where all that fan lettering would come in. They'd be like, "Why did you draw him like this?" Or so they
Right,
were
right.
getting a ton of like feedback, and they would listen.
Yeah,
These are the fans.
right. And you wonder, the those kayfabe videos go over, like, boy, how much did anybody end up getting paid? Buscema invented all these bad guys, and they were used later and late, and they might end up in a movie that's a lot of money. I remember Buscema. He did Mephisto. I remember he did
Yep.
all of these bad guys. He did the Warriors 3, right, from Thor, right,
Hmm.
and all these great characters. So it ended up, Marvel had some payment process where they just gave like some bonus money here, because you invented this character and we're using him again, some kind of like royalty thing that just, I guess, placated, the creators so that they wouldn't sue, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but of course, a lot of that just ended up in lawsuits anyway. Depending on how much the creators wanted to push it. So so there you go. But yeah, that pretty much round out the I guess the death pool. So I guess we're just waiting for the next one. These guys, these classics, these classic guys, if they're still around, are in their 80s, some of them, and if they're not around, I guess we missed them. But um, you know, bygone eras, and the artwork will always live on in my mind. I think nothing will ever uh, compare to the golden era of well, I shouldn't say golden, but the 60s and 70s Marvel comics of my childhood. And that might just be me based because that's what I grew up with and I took to. But I say the same thing about music. That nothing can compare to the music that was made between like 1966 and 1972 or something. There's just these eras that that it's still what sells today. Those same contracts are still just they're just reprinting all that stuff and using all that stuff, and it's informing everything that came later. So
Timeless.
timeless. And then we have what we're doing. In the other corner of the comic book universe, metaverse, multiverse, whatever. Um, we have our latest efforts here for Turbo Pit Fighter #2 and #1. So yeah, I don't know what you're cranking out there. I can only see a little. Oh yeah, you're
I'm
doing the
on, yeah, I'm on.
you
This
did
is page 6. And so this is where Turbo is after her fight, still drinking. And she's now watching a pit fight between these two big hulking brutes.
right.
And then this will also be, I don't know how blurry it is or faint it is because I'm obviously working over your pencils, but she meets Trophy Girl, so who's in
Right.
a is in a like a plastic, not or glass
Yeah.
container. She's been
Yeah.
wheeled out as on the trophy stand.
Right.
So
Right. That's imminent.
yep.
So yeah, so I was um taking your advice and I was looking online and I was looking up some of these Kickstarters and boy have I been out of it. So and you
Hmm.
probably are a lot more familiar than me, but um so I see that yes, independent comic creators are all on Kickstarter now, and I think it's a fantastic way for people to get involved, and you can help subsidize a comic before it's ever printed by buying, by just kicking in to the Kickstarter. And you see these, I scrolled a couple of pages down, like I saw, Brian Pulido has his La Muerta character, and that was funded. And you see a lot of these other creators who have established names. They've been around for a couple of years, and they're getting all their stuff funded. And then you get down, a little bit deeper, and you see some stuff that's still, still being funded, or maybe I didn't get to things that didn't get funded, but um, I think it's a great model. Um, I wish that I see the whole thing. It looks like a lot of work, Kurt. It looks like a lot of work. You got to
Yeah.
post
No, I've
post
I've
all of
done a
these
couple.
extras,
Yeah.
all of these little things and doodads, and you get a sticker if you get to this level, and then like
Yeah.
everybody gets a sticker. So I get it, but when do you make the comics? Is my question.
Well, it's nowadays you will not get funded unless that comic is made. That's the first. There were so many stories about people burning people, artists, getting 50, 60, 70, 80, $100,000 on a Kickstarter and disappearing.
But
So
they don't
there's
get
a
but they
lot
never
of.
got the money though. You don't get the money
Oh no,
until you
you get
reach.
well. There's probably a lot of things have changed in the rules or for how fulfillment is done or
Yeah,
whatever. But back in the day, now this is just all that because it was the Wild West,
right.
and so all of these ones that burn people, rules started getting tightened up, and what you had to do for fulfillment, but just people who backed somebody. It might have been a friend's Kickstarter, even getting burned. If you
Right.
get burned once, shame
Yeah.
on them. But if you get burned a second time, shame on you.
Mhm.
So it goes back to my thing that I was just listening to
Finish
a
the book.
podcast today, and they were just going about the kind of the rules. And if the biggest success, a lot of independent comic book podcasts talk about in their own experience is that if you have 2 issues in the can and you release issue one, and you can tell people immediately once that issue is released, let's say through Kickstarter and the crowdfunding, and then you say, hey guys, just want you to know we're going to do another Kickstarter in 3 months. Issue 2 is already done. Issue 3 is. They say there's guys making a living because they're out on issue 7. And issue 7, if you think about it, you're doing 3 issues a year. That's kind of the thing.
Hmm.
But you're getting so much support because you're following through on the promise, and the people who are Kickstarters, and these are people who love supporting Kickstarter. They're there because they love this interaction and the kind of game of it, I guess, would be one way. But
Uh-huh.
if you can't you're coming up with a whole bunch of excuses. It's just going to get around town, and then
Yeah,
you're
you
done.
gotta deliver.
You're done. And I think that's
Yeah.
one of the things too about what the internet has done for us. Um, and part of that is you've got to be professional.
Mhm.
No matter how talented you are, you got to you've got to really be professional. But I also think too, you got to find the people who want this stuff. So one of the notes I have, just to kind of jump, just to make sure that my topic gets at least some ground, is we're making a men's comic. I would say it was originally designed for that purpose. So not that we can't, because we are talking about how to broaden the story from just being smash 'em, bash 'em, and grab 'ems, where the romance comes in between Trophy Girl and Turbo.
Mhm.
But I think it's kind of a neat challenge for us, to try to find a way to get, uh, you know, I don't want to say new people, because I think there's a very set amount of people who are in the independent comics that are there also at the Kickstarter level. But
Mhm.
to say, hey, we're taking an old thing, and we're putting our twist to it, and we hope it's going to work, but we need your support. That type of sales mechanism, if you will. But we just
Yeah, I
gotta
think we're
we just gotta
I
follow through.
yeah, I think we definitely gotta get there, when we're done and, and not just, to get, maybe some money for the printing, but also, also to, get the community going and then,
You got to
you know,
get that
refer.
following. You got to get that following, and
Yeah,
this is
because
the
we
first
have our
part of it.
podcast, and so
Yeah.
that's something immediately that anybody can jump on. You know.
Well, we got to get it in front of people. So, that's going to be another thing that we need to be, kind of conscientious about. I mean, I posted on Instagram just a little uh, icon,
Hmm.
podcast, Turbo Pit Fighter podcast. And then I just snapshot like 4 panels or segments of panels and then threw that up. But then I also put together a quick 1 minute from the podcast, and then push that. But I have to say this, though, there were a couple of people who ended up coming my way through Instagram, that, liked it. And then I clicked their profile. And guess what they were doing? Their own black and white independent comics. So, and that kind of that does get me like excited, because it's that old preaching to the crowd, or the
Yeah.
choir, and I think that's, in my opinion, I believe the majority of sales go to people who are also making a comic book or even struggling to make a comic book. So
Hmm.
there's another thing to be very conscious about, in moving forward, that we definitely are speaking what we're starting out as, which is we're talking about making a comic book, and I see very few people doing that in the trench level. In other words, Jake, I'm on issue 1, page 6. I got a question for you. Why are these guys, blah blah? And you're like, oh wow, I didn't
Yeah.
think of that. And then we're working it out. As well as just trying to figure it out as an industry and sales, and that. I think the inverted part of it is the making a comic book. It's not as straightforward as buying how to draw comics the Marvel way. Like, that's all dead, because the
Yeah.
reason that book existed was you made those pages, you sent them to Marvel. Marvel went, wow, they kind of aped their way through it. Why don't we just give them this short 10 page backup, which we won't print? We'll keep it
Right.
in this drawer when so and so can't make their deadline. You know what I mean? Like, but that doesn't exist anymore.
No.
It just doesn't. And it is very much about the fan base and what people are looking for, and so on and so forth. So I mean, we've got a pretty high climb up a mountain to go, and you and I have both made it our mission in life, not just for this Turbo Pit Fighter podcast. In life, where we're at, this is what we want to do, and we're going to be conscientious about it, in process. But we're going to figure it out, and we're going to share it here on Turbo Pit Fighter podcast,
Hmm.
comic podcast.
Yeah. So we have our sequences. I'm still working on the same page as last week. I was a bad boy. I actually had I had to make some slideshows this week,
Okay.
unrelated. Um, I was asked to make some slideshows for Juneteenth explainers, that are going to go also online on Teachers Pay Teachers. Um, but I'm back now, and I can't. I really just can't wait for the summer where I
Yeah.
can really just take some time here and just you know catch up and get some
Yeah,
real
you're warming up.
volume.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still trying to get my other worldly responsibilities in order, and some of them are just not going to get completed until the end of the year. But I've already turned down work twice. Just people requesting drawing of this or something. I'm just like, I got way too much going on. And by the way, check out my podcast.
Yeah.
you and going from there. But So, but hey, look, we are coming around the 45-minute marker, which we're trying to keep these episodes to, but that doesn't mean we can't go ahead and go another 45 and make a part 2. So
Sure.